If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah blah blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah blah blah.
Good vibes.
Blah
Good vibes.
blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection, and put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track, shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
I think you might be talking about beneath the step pyramid, which they have only just reopened, and it's where they'd found like 40,000 of these just exquisite sort of machine lathe-turned stone vases made from some of the hardest types of stone on the planet.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Kerkwyk Show. We are going to be chatting with Ben vanKerkwyk, of course, from the famous YouTube channel UnchartedX. Does a great job over there with his Egypt stuff. You know, probably one of the best channels out there for ancient mysteries, ancient modern technology in Egypt, and like the drill holes and a lot of 4K footage, and just all around great guy who we've been lucky enough to get to know over the last, really over the last year when we started to meet him. You met him too, right? He was there in the fall. Yeah, he was. Yeah. So, and then we're going to see him again here later on in this episode. We talk about, contemplate him coming to Utah. And then he just texted me the other day and said he will be there. And there is, I think, 1 or 2 spots left for that event. So if you want to come and hang out with Graham and I and Brandon Powell and Dave Matheson and Russ and
a whole bunch of cool people.
Russ and Kyle Allen from the Brothers of the Serpent, and I know for sure Brad will be there from Cosmographia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And now, of course, Ben from UnchartedX is going to be there as well, and a bunch of other super cool people. I think we did like 50 or 60% of the people that went last year came back this year. We did add an extra day. And so yeah, there's 2 spots left for that. If you're interested in that, don't fuck around. Go over to Contact at the Cabin, check that out.
And that's like the middle place where we're staying in Duck Creek. There, it's between Zion and Bryce, right? So we do like 1 day at Bryce and 1 day at Zion,
and a flex day where people can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
They can hang around, or we'll probably offer a shuttle to each of the national parks if they want to go do that. Try another trail at one of them.
And that's at the end of April.
Yeah, or they can just, there's a bunch of stuff to do around there. There's off-road vehicles you can rent just up the road if people want to go do that and try out some trails. I mean, I'm back and forth because it would be pretty cool to grab one of those side-by-sides and go ripping off into the mountains. It'd be pretty gnarly, but I think I want to do the hiking. So it doesn't look like I could do Angel's Pass because I went to do the permit and it was all like booking for July already. So
oh my God,
there's like a lottery, but it looks like Garth, shout out to Garth, might have some buddies that already have it lined up to do the West Rim. So I might just go do that with them instead. Or I might go rent a side-by-side and go ripping through the woods. We'll see. Remains to be seen. We'll have some pools there for the cold training, of course, and we'll go and see the stars over Bryce Canyon. This is, our flagship event, really. It's because like the Randall events sort of taken on a life of their own. So I'd say this is our second crack at this. It'll be the first one we've done 2 of, I guess. It's not a Randall event, and it's guaranteed we'll be back for 3rd and 4th ones of these because it's a fan favorite. And Dave loves it. And the stars are fucking nominal. So check it out. There's only 2 spots left for Montana in June with Randall Carlson as well. Only 2 spots left. That was filled up, and I added 2 rooms, and then those filled up right away. Snake Mom and Snake Dad are coming to that. The Stash and Snake Mom are coming. So that'll be a party too. As we tour it up through Idaho and Montana. And and then there's of course a couple Scablands tours in the fall. Egypt, I think, is full, but we're just going to keep, if you haven't paid your Egypt deposit yet, that's the only way to secure your spot. I think the last time I checked, there was already like 47 or 49 deposits paid.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's like 75 people on the list. So just something to bear in mind. Well, we might end up taking a couple more for that. We're contemplating what to do because there might be more interest than we think. And the hosts are saying, now, you might be able to fit in a couple more. So we'll see what happens, but go sign up. If you haven't paid the deposit, pay the deposit because that's the only way you're going is if you pay that deposit. Contact at thecavern.com. There's a link down at the bottom of the page for that Egypt stuff as well. But I'm assuming like the Egypt won't be an annual. So the Egypt will be more of an every 2 or 3 years type thing, probably. I mean, we'll see. Who knows? Shit gets crazy fast around here. Check that out. Contact at thecavern.com. What you got?
I don't know. Gratefulness, gratitude, Yeah, of the listeners and everybody who supports the show and our other show, Outlawed, and able to sort of try and give this a go for a job. I mean, it's been an interesting go. I hit a milestone, 14 years.
Of being short.
Yeah, 14 years. No, I've been short more than that. Ever since 86 when I didn't grow.
It was 86 the year where you're like, yep, this is it.
Well, the doctor still gave you hope. It's like, hey, you might have a spurt when you're 19 or 20, but.
You were going to the doctor about it?
Yeah.
About your height?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just to see. I think it was it might have been just a checkup or whatever.
Did they have you doing any exercises to stretch?
No.
No. You should have hung from your ankles more.
I know, you wonder, eh? No, I don't care. I don't have a problem with size or height or anything.
Anymore.
Doesn't bother me.
Anymore.
No, I never did really. No, it's been 14 years clean and sober.
Attaboy. I'm at 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Is there a 15-minute chip?
No. 24-hour.
I could get that one.
Yeah.
I could save a bunch of those up.
Just 1 hour at a time. 1 minute at a time.
Then I'll trade them on a 24-hour chip for some free weed. Is that all you got for the show this week? Or?
No, I got an email from some feedback from last week's show actually we're I think we're shadow banned on Instagram. Instagram's getting really weird with after that Svetlana. We had no traction on our Svetlana post on Instagram. It's really weird.
Really?
I mean, maybe it's the hashtags. Maybe I should just take all those hashtags out,
Yeah, I'm not much of a hashtagger. The only time I'll ever use a hashtag is if I'm trolling it.
Yeah.
Because I want to get my content out to the people I'm trolling.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I mean, otherwise, who's really searching those hashtags, right? I mean, especially on Instagram. So it might just be like a trigger for them to slow you down or,
Oh, yeah. I could imagine the hashtags you're putting in there. That's a terrible idea. Terrible idea. Like hashtag deep state, hashtag
CIA,
hashtag fucking planet.
Parallel society, vaccine injury.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. That'll get you shadow, man. Just keep those out of there. The only time you should use a hashtag is if you're trolling that hashtag is my
that's your rule. So I do have a great email.
Or unless you're doing like an audio, maybe a hashtag audiobook.
Yeah. Well, I don't do that really, actually. I don't do them on those. It's usually just for the show.
Just the ones that'll get you in trouble.
Yeah.
That's clever.
So we had a great show with Svetlana about parallel health systems and sort of a holistic approach to health systems. And I got some feedback here because we were talking in the interview about CBC and sort of like what happened to the mainstream. So do you have a jingle for this or? Graham. So big shout out to Graham's calves. They were pretty ripped. Oh, come on. That's uncalled for.
It's you saying it. I mean, you set yourself up for this stuff. Why would you ever say that on the
I
show?
didn't say that. Somebody's deep faking me together.
You think so?
Yeah. So big shout out
Failed.
to Graham's calves.
Failed.
They were pretty ripped. Our old friend failed.
So you said big shout out to, and then Graham. But you said Graham's calves at some point.
No, I said Graham at some point and calves at some point. It all gets
No.
together.
That's definitely the same cut.
No,
So
it's
big
not.
shout out to Graham's calves. They were pretty ripped.
No,
That
it's
might.
all edited together.
Well, he's good. You better
Or maybe
watch.
somebody.
You're
or
gonna-
I was
you're gonna
reading
come
an
up with a
email.
whole
Somebody
speech
had
of
it in
you,
there.
just some,
Somebody
like,
trolled me in an email.
Some crazy alt-right speech. Well, you used to be such a sucker. I mean, remember when I just said, "Hey, say your full name"? You're like Graham Dunlop.
Yeah. Remember that? Remember the fortune cookie prank?
Yeah,
The secret. Oh my God.
that's episode 139, I think.
139. Oh my God. Darren got me so bad with a fortune cookie prank. It was just unbelievable. He had me the whole way through. I was just howling and yelling and
139
screaming
might be
about
part
what a
one.
synchronicity it was. And then all the fortune cookies. Oh, I'm not
Well,
gonna,
don't burn it. Why would you spoil
edit that
it?
out.
I'm not editing shit out.
So here's the email. It says, in the show you just released with Svetlana Delalana, you guys were wondering when the CBC started to go downhill. I don't have a definitive answer, but I used to listen to CBC radio a lot. And I do remember that in the 1980s and the early 90s, the CBC radio show Ideas was willing to run a controversial episode that ran counter to the corporate media narrative of the day. I'm thinking particularly of a series of episodes that they did questioned whether HIV causes AIDS or not. That was a shocking thing to suggest at the time, and is still contentious today. It would be like proposing now that COVID isn't caused by coronavirus or any sort of virus. CBC would not be willing to do something like that now. I have a friend who was a CBC radio host for many years. Let's call this person X. I'm convinced that this friend's show was canceled because X wouldn't toe the journalistic line and made too much of a fuss when X saw the producers fiddling with the truth. It was a journalistic story about something controversial that brought about my friend's end there. X heard how the story got broadcast and knew that it didn't match what had really happened. My friend had been the journalist on the ground, but had heard the original and unedited interviews that were used to construct a story as it was a broadcast. So X was asking a lot of questions like, why are you distorting what happened? This wasn't the first time that X had questioned what seemed like bias, but it was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. At the end of that season, my friend's show was canceled. That's how they keep the hosts in line. Ask questions and your show gets canceled. Just go along with the master narratives. Lockdowns are a good idea. The unvaxxed spread COVID. Climate change is a catastrophe, etc. And it's not just that every CBC host is afraid of having their show canceled, but also that if you keep getting rid of people who ask questions, at a certain point, you're left with a bunch of dummies who wouldn't think to question what I'm calling the master narratives. On the matter of whether the current crop of CBC on-air staff are a bunch of dummies, the question answers itself if you listen to the content. There are exceptions. Eleanor Watchell and Paya Chattopadhyay both strike me as being extremely intelligent, but I'm sure that they're very blue-pilled, understand the parameters that they're allowed to work in, and know better than to ask awkward questions. So there you have it. I'm going to just leave that anonymous for now.
Anonymous.
Yeah. And thank you very much for the email. And yeah, I mean, it's just even wrapping up now more and more. Like I'm hearing retractions from the stories that CBC was saying, oh, the convoy wasn't violent. And I mean, it's all just too late, right? All those retractions are too late. All the stuff that they're backing off on now, it's just too late. The damage has been done. They're allowed to have it both ways. You know, they can say, oh, we made it a retraction. Well, you didn't really. You just had one little story somewhere that leaked out that was sort of like, oh, we kind of got those things wrong. Oh, really? That was part of the whole clamp down, freeze the bank accounts, you know, allowing the rest of the media to grab hold of these stories, right? It's interesting how I want to dig into this one day, maybe with a researcher or maybe even just doing sort of a deep dive ourselves on like all it takes is one little story from somewhere and everybody else just picks up on it. And then it makes it seem like it's got, you know, a whole bunch of investigators when really it's just one planted story.
A planted story?
Or it could be, yeah. It could be a planted story. It could be just the photo op with the one flag that was out of context.
Or the hurricane guy. Then the guys walk by in the background. It's just normal.
Yeah. I tried to find my spoof. I saved a spoof video on that and I couldn't find it. It's so funny. The guy's lying on a table with the fan blowing on him. And he's like, the wind and the rain. And his mom busts him for doing it. And it's just the best video ever.
The best ever, and you lost it? You lost the best
well,
video.
I think I saved it in my Instagram, in our Instagram, and I think it only saves for so many years.
Over there?
Sorry.
It's okay if you are. I mean, we know how partial to the drums you are. I just don't want to see you making yourself cry.
Yeah, that's a good point. Drums are
you could never be a drummer because you might just burst out crying. Or would you not cry at your own shit?
I don't know. I mean, that was a special moment. So I just don't cry at every drumming. I mean, it has to hit the right nerves.
Which ones?
I mean, dude, they were talking. I'm reading this book right now on magic, written in the 1500s, and they were talking about how thousands of years ago they knew music had this emotional influence on people.
Well, it's not hard to tell.
The bards and but I mean, it's been around for thousands of years, right? People have been crying over drums for thousands of years. I mean, why do you think the indigenous sacred, their drumming is so sacred still?
No, because we cry.
It makes you emotional.
It's a big cry fest. Oh, God, I just love it so much. Elton John, you sexy bastard.
No, it wasn't. What are you doing? It wasn't about Elton. It was about his drummer.
What are you doing over there? Wait.
I'm ready for the quote of the day. It's speaking of Instagram. I saved one up here for you.
For me?
Yeah. See if you can guess who this is.
Oh, what am I like? 15 for 40? That's probably optimistic.
You're doing pretty good.
Think so?
It's the profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke it or wrote it down? Profound.
Like, imagine they were healing with instruments. Like, they talked about this healing with music back like thousands of years ago. I mean, remember we had that guest on Neil Gar who sort of did the sound healing for years and years.
I thought it was Gore.
Oh, sorry, Gore. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. The drum. I mean, that's got something to do with the drums making you cry, right? It's
mispronunciations are like a thing.
Power to heal.
It's weird.
Okay, ready? Humans are now hackable animals. The whole idea that humans have this soul or spirit and nobody knows what's happening inside them and they have free will, that's over.
David Icke.
No. It's Professor Yuval Noah Harari, Klaus Schwab's top advisor.
Harari?
Yeah.
Like Ferrari?
Harari.
Yeah.
Harari. Yeah. It's his top advisor.
Huh. Klaus Schwab has top advisors?
Yeah.
How much money
they want to hack? They want that are hacking humans and basically saying your spirit soul is over.
Well, it's not hard.
No
to
more.
Hack us.
No more free will.
Well, whether we ever had it is debatable.
Yeah.
You just have to know what strings to pull.
I'd agree with you.
Huh. What else you got?
What you think?
Still?
No, it's getting better.
Are you gonna get the root canals?
Well, my dentist has a medical emergency, so I can't. I have to wait for my next appointment to be scheduled. So,
like your dentist is?
Yeah. So I shopped around a little bit for another holistic dentist around here, but they're all going to do the same thing. I feel like there's no options. Like you have an infection, you get either a root canal or your tooth pulled. There's no other like option. And they might not even be able to do root canal, so they have to take my crowns off and inspect it and all that. So,
Yeah, I don't know that there is another option other than just don't fuck your teeth up. That really is the.
I know, but like you think that our bodies would be able to heal infections, right? I'm thinking, well, I mean, you could use all these garlics and all this stuff, like there's all these sort of natural cures. But I don't know if everybody seems to think that this just comes back once it gets that bad. It comes back.
Well, you'd have to like really watch your diet, and keep it super clean. The problem is once there's an infection in there, like oof. If you didn't have antibiotics, it would probably just keep getting worse. Like a toothache probably take you out back in the day. It's awful close to your brain.
Yeah, well, like I was telling you, I tried those bone conduction headphones, and it was right after listening to on a long drive, having those on and listening to them.
Why?
Well,
Just listening.
Just know that I had to. Listen
conduct
to
bone.
What?
You had to conduct sound through your bones.
What do you mean? I wanted to try it out instead of wearing earpods, right? And AirPods.
What's wrong with just the speakers in your car?
Well, because I had to. There's other things going on besides me that I had to be,
ignore.
Keep it to myself, and ignore. Yeah. Bit of both.
I don't really use headsets ever.
I know. Well, I have to sometimes. So, anyways, I mean, I got a headache that day, and then my toothache the next day, or that day, even that night, or the next day. I think it just shook shit up in there and accelerated the infection. I mean, maybe it's just the Bluetooth that's been going through your head's been just like doing minor chemo on your root canal infection up until now. Yeah, exactly.
If you switch back to the Bluetooth, you might be okay here. I don't know. If you can get the root canals out, I'd probably do it. Unless you're going to get implants.
No, I'm going to try for sure, yeah.
I hate my missing teeth. Eventually, I want to go to Mexico, get them sorted out. But
it's really weird. They seem to really want to pull them easily. They don't seem to want to do root canals anymore. I know there's been some problems with carcinogenic materials, they're saying, in them from old root canals.
Those back.
And then you wonder, like, are the implants going to be the same thing? In 10 years, going to be, oh my God, whoever had teeth implants. I mean, everything seems to just fall apart in about 5 to 10 years.
Bad news, bucko.
Yeah.
That's why I never ever got the eye surgery. I was just worried my eyes might fall.
Was that an option for you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But everyone I know that got the eye surgery is wearing glasses again. So
really? Wow.
Hey, you got to keep getting it, I think.
I've been reading the books without glasses to try and strengthen my eyes again. It seems to be working. I don't seem to wear reading glasses as much. So
I'm not even into contacts and shit. I also wear my glasses. Okay, stop playing the drums, man. People are going to be fucking emailing.
Sorry, I can't hear it myself.
We can hear it. We can hear it.
Sorry. All
right, what else you got?
Well, that's about it. I mean, I do have a project operation if you want to hear it. It's kind of a weird one, though. It's kind of scary.
I don't, but I'm sure someone else does. It's kind of scary if worried it's too scary for the show. Or you don't want to get scared before Dungeons and Dragons.
No, okay, let's do it.
What's that noise? Looks military to me. Definitely military. Probably classified, too.
Dishfire, Prism, Sentry Eagle, Sigma, Mannequin, Artichoke, MK Ultra. Operation Project.
I was looking for one about the what?
Why aren't we live streaming your D&D yet?
Oh, we're not. No, we're never going to live stream the D&D. That's just not. It's not applicable anymore. I've given up on that. Even that hope that will be a thing.
Why? Too much on a train wreck every time.
Yeah,
people still fall asleep.
What?
Do people still fall asleep?
Nope.
Or is it just your guys' banter that'll be too much? You guys will all get canceled.
It's just not. It's not professional enough for streaming at all.
Oh. They're like a bar, a Dungeons and Dragons streaming bar that you'd have to hit.
That's a good idea.
But I mean, like a bar you'd have to hit. Not like a
yeah. I mean, otherwise, why bother if you're not gonna? If it's not listenable, then
a D&D bar would be a good idea, though. That's where all these dorks can feel safe. You just have
it's
to
getting
watch them
super
get
woke.
infiltrated.
Anyways, it's
D&D is your D&D is
no, not ours.
oh, just like
it's crazy. But it's just the whole.
How
thing.
can it get woke? That's like Monopoly getting woke.
I know. That's why, right? It's so popular that's where they're attacking. The wokeness is attacking it, right?
BLM
calling it racist again, and D&D's racist, and
BLM monopoly.
Because orcs are stronger than dwarves, and
Are dwarves colored?
Dwarves aren't as magical as elves. It's all just racist, right? I mean, it's crazy. They're not races. They're species. These are different things.
Whoa.
Orcs are stronger. So what?
Races are different species?
Well, that's what an orc is different. Like, it's not the same. It's not like they're all just different races like we have in
all right.
real life.
This has gone too far. Let's hear you.
Well, you keep bringing it up. So, I mean, don't bring up my D&D.
I don't see how it could be woke. It's like completely in-house.
I just told you how.
It's completely in-house.
I just told you how. I'm talking about the game. It's like the whole culture, the game itself, the rules, the people, the pop culture aspect of it.
There's woke rules.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. They're getting rid of all the racial abilities and stuff because they think it's racist, right? Yeah.
Why did black people have special powers?
Well, there isn't black people in there. That's the point.
Your problem. There's your problem. Why can't there be black people?
You can have anything you want.
Well, then
it's not real life. It's a fantasy world.
Well, make your fantasy world less racist.
Monsters aren't evil anymore. Like, fine. You know.
Who says monsters aren't evil?
Well, I'm telling you, this is what's happening.
I think you spend too much time on the internet, bro. We got to get you out more. Do you have a bike? I got to buy a new bike. My seat's not comfortable and my gears don't work. I'm just stuck in 6th gear all the time.
Oh, that sucks. So anyways, this is, I was looking for one to supplement our awesome episode with Ben here. Maybe like, one on the Ark or these artifacts that people say were taken from the museums in Iraq when the war, like sort of a conspiratorial, like Project Stargate type stuff. But instead of going down that, I ended up going down this rabbit hole with Minerva, Project Minerva. Because that's, I think, the name of a goddess. And it's got to do with Condor, Operation Condor, which is also known as Plan Condor. Oh, hang on. This is weird. It says involving intelligence operations and assassinations of opponents. It was officially and formally implemented in 1975 by the right-wing dictatorships of the southern cone of South America. So it's talking about this clandestine nature. The precise number of deaths directly attributable to Operation Condor is highly disputed. So I'm going to leave that there because Minerva just talks about this. So this is this is from ciaday.wordpress. I'll put a link in the show notes, but it's the CIA's Minerva secret. And it talks about Operation Condor in these countries, and they use this crypto AG devices without realizing that the CIA owned the company. So these National Security Archive documents reveal that these encryption revelations raise the question about U.S. official knowledge of Argentina's dirty war atrocities. Letelier's assassination, Southern Cone military dictatorships, Swiss encryption company secretly owned by U.S. and German intelligence agencies, according to these records, and the Washington Post. So it talks about how NSA and the GCHQ spied on the Cold War world. So, I mean, this is interesting because this goes back to the 70s and now we're like 50 years later when all this stuff's going on, still with Russia and the Ukraine. It says the U.S. Intelligence community actively monitored for decades the diplomatic and military communications of numerous Latin American nations through encryption machines supplied by this Swiss company that was secretly owned by the CIA and German intelligence agencies. According to reports made today by the German public television channel ZDF and the Washington Post. So take it all with a grain of salt because you never know what the Washington Post could be just more propaganda. But it talks about declassified records posted by the NSA showing that these surveilled countries were military regimes of the Operation Condor nations. So that was like led by Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay. And they conducted regional and international acts of repression and terrorism against leading opposition figures. Let's see here. They call it, so this Minerva, the ZDF reports in the Washington Post story titled The Intelligence Coup of the Century. For decades, the CIA read the encrypted communications of allies and adversaries, based their accounts on classified internal histories from the CIA and the BND, which detailed their partnership to purchase Crypto AG. The company founded in the 30s. Then it was the NSA dating back to the 50s. And they rigged the company's devices so they could easily break the codes that countries use to send encrypted messages. So they generated a wealth of intelligence intercepts from countries around the world, among them Iran, Egypt, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Italy. So I'll leave it at that, I guess. It's quite an article. It's got a lot more stuff. Talks about Condortel. It represented a formal agreement among the Southern Cone military dictatorships to coordinate repressive operations, including assassination. Yeah, it's pretty in depth, pretty cool story. But I don't know, good context for what's happening right now. That
pretty cool story. Check out gramerica.ca/sport. Try that again. Not gonna edit that either, though. Sorry, that just got a hold of me. Check out gramerica.ca/support today. If you guys aren't a supporter, if you like what we do here, I think this is episode like 550 or something.
60 maybe? 560?
No, you're like
no, 540.
high. You're way high. Last time you did this too, and I turned out to be exactly right.
Oh,
I didn't gloat, but here we are. Now you've made me gloat. I didn't want to gloat. But if you enjoy what you hear here, I mean, you could check out all those back catalog episodes. Like we said, that intro to 139 and 142, I believe, tie in nicely. There's some fantastic guests back there. Rick Simpson. Some of that are even passed away now. That won't do shows anymore. Like I think number 60 or so might have been Dave McGowan. We had the fabulous Dave McGowan on the show. So check out the back catalog. And if you're enjoying what you hear and you like the show here, check out gramerica.ca/support today. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. Whatever you can do to help us keep going, keep growing, and keep flowing around here. Of course, Graham does try and do this full time. Not try to. He's been doing it for a year now. Let's keep him going.
Not quite a year, but it'll be a year in a couple months.
Yeah, pretty much mailed it in by now. And then,
but
of course,
mean, I'm still not where I was, right? I mean, I want to be clear that this is still a leap of faith. I mean, it's going really well. I'm super grateful, but we still need people's support. It's still a lot of work, and
I still work, so maybe that could be more of a problem than you not being where you were. Maybe we could get me out of working first, then we'll get you there.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean,
I'm still stuck.
I'm not even there yet. So, but I love what I do, and I love the show we do, and all the people that listen, and our guests, and I mean, it's fantastic. So, I'm not complaining.
Check out our other show, gramericaoutlaw.ca. See if you like that over there. It's a bit different topics, a little bit different flavor than here. It doesn't have the intros or anything like that, but it does. There's the opportunity to go for the full 2-hour show over there. And then, of course, there's all the audiobooks. Head over to adultbrain.ca. We got over 50 audiobook titles out now. You can get them all there, and you can check out my book at canadianshame.ca. I got another book coming out here in their own words. It'll probably be out, I'd say, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll let you know when that's out. But support our stuff. Otherwise, we won't be able to keep doing it. Anything else? Should we just save the... I could save the social media stuff for next week.
Yeah, let's save it for next week.
That's it. We're out of here.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Enjoy the chat with the wonderful Ben vanKerkwyk from UnchartedX, one of the best YouTube channels out there. And if you want to meet him, come check us out either in Utah, Montana, or Washington. He'll be at all 3 of those events. Check it out. contact@thecabin.com. Enjoy the chat with Ben.
Ben vanKerkwyk, welcome to Gray America. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite, guys. It's great to talk to you guys again.
Yeah, it'll be good. We're getting to know you in person. We're going on trips together, like some of Randall's events, some of our events, and of course, Egypt coming up in November 2022. But for those who don't really know much about you yet, maybe we can get a little bit of background on like how, because I don't think on our other show, I don't think we really got into like how you got sort of involved and started up your amazing UnchartedX YouTube channel and all that. Maybe a little bit of that history.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you and us, we all cross paths through some of the common interests, and I'd kind of gotten really deep into some of Randall Carlson's stuff, and then the trips he was doing, which of course you guys are involved in, and that's more or less how we met. And then there's that sort of realm of the podcast world for those people interested in ancient mysteries and technology, and the Graham Hancocks, who I know you guys have spoken to several times. So it was, I guess, almost inevitable that we'd end up chatting at some point. But for me, my interest in it has been a long-standing one. It's something that I've always been interested in. Even as a kid, I did history in high school. My mother was a history teacher, so I had kind of an interest from it back in the day. I almost went that way at university, but figured out you'd make a lot more money doing IT. Really, not a lot of it in history, so it went that way. But eventually, it was similar to a lot of people, I think, like Hancock's work, Graham Hancock's work, Fingerprints of the Gods. Eventually saw him on his very first appearance on the Rogan podcast. Got exposed to a few more of his ideas around consciousness, things like that, which I guess lead you down your own little journeys of discovering what priorities are in life and evaluating yourself and things like that. And I eventually had the chance to travel with Graham. So he said that I think he was researching his second book after Fingerprints, The Magicians of the Gods, and he said, well, he's doing a research trip into Peru and Bolivia in 2013, and I was like, sign me up, take my money, and immediately did that, and that was pretty much it. We, after spending 2 weeks with Graham down there in South America, looking at all of the incredible stuff that you see in the Sacred Valley in Cusco, in Bolivia, Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, I'd already been, my interest in this stuff was rising as it was, but after that I was absolutely fascinated, and then I guess a slow progression of the next several years, becoming more and more involved in this and deciding eventually it was time to quit my day job and try to make something out of this, because I really saw that there was kind of a space for some more content here. There was kind of as a crossover of a couple of different things. One was the rise of consumer grade, really kind of high quality and stabilized video equipment. So it no longer cost you tens of thousands of dollars to be able to film something in 4K that was stabilized, and you could get some really high quality footage, because at that time it felt like that type of footage was really lacking on a lot of these sites. And there was a lot of just tremendous thinking and new ideas and I guess really new concepts and new approaches to the mysteries of the past that were being raised by authors like Hancock, like Beauval, like a lot of other people, but they're in these books. They were kind of buried in all these books. You had to be right into the topic to be able to,
or on Ancient Aliens, for example, right?
Yeah, all of that as well. Yeah, bringing those up. But I thought there was kind of room for a new look at a lot of these sites with some high quality footage, and then trying to and a focused deep dive kind of video sort of mini documentary look at some of these mysteries, and that's kind of the niche I ended up in. And it was. I had no idea what I was doing when I first got into it. Like, it was just I got in it with the intention of making a documentary in the first place, and of course that's the film world, That's like backers and production, and so you naturally kind of end up on YouTube, and that's where I kind of found my niche. And a few years later, here I am.
So it wasn't just that you were not satisfied at the corporate sort of gig anymore, but was that part of it? Just unfulfilled in your job as well, and then you saw an opportunity and went for it, kind of thing?
I'd been 20 years in IT, and I had it wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say I wasn't really burnt out. I'd lost, as you do, you kind of go through that shift. I mean, I have my ambition and that whole corporate consumerism kind of driven thing, like climb that corporate ladder ambition, to kind of thank for putting me in a position to eventually be able to quit to go chase this. But you eventually, I think, I was in my sort of early mid-30s and I started to reevaluate what was important. Like that whole ambition ladder of like, I need more money, I need more promotions, I need more stuff. Like I kind of fell off that roundabout because I'm looking at, and I'd been sort of shooting up the corporate ladder, right? I quickly became, I moved from Australia to Singapore for a few years, and then to the US, to the global headquarters. I picked up a global role. I was sort of one of the technologists in the CTO group, kind of doing my own thing and working on projects. And a lot of people would consider it kind of a dream job in IT, that type of thing. But it just ceased to be that important to me, And it's just all my time was spent thinking about all this other stuff. And in fact, it was funny because whenever we get to events or even with customers and in the downtime, I'd be talking about, history stuff and Egypt and Peru and all these things instead of technology and routers and data centers and virtualization and all this other stuff. So yeah, it was just kind of a natural thing. Eventually I was like, I've got to keep a toe in it, but I'm like, I'm just not that interested in that industry anymore. And I had the chance to step outside of it. It's kind of something I could go back to it if ever I really needed to, but it's not something I ever want to.
Was there a bit of an overlap there? Like, how long did it take you to kind of quit that after you started sort of your channel?
Yeah, it was probably I mean, I had a lot of planning. There was a good couple of years there where it was some significant overlap, and then eventually, and again, it was thanks to kind of that corporate world and that the ambition. I put myself in a position where I was able to take a couple of years off. Like that was my intent. It was. I originally sort of sold it as like, hey, I'm taking like a long-term hiatus from this industry. Like I'm getting off the roundabout to go try out some other sort of passion projects, if you want to call it that. And then there did come a point, like in 2019, 2019 was the kind of make or break where it's like, well, this is fun, this is interesting, it's growing a bit, but I needed to, I started to look at contract work again because I was like, well, I can't, I needed to make an income from it. I'm not looking to make it. I mean, if I want money, I'll go back to IT, but it was like I needed to make something from it. Thankfully, my wife does work, and I was in a good position to start with, I guess. But it was like, this has to turn into actually something that's sustainable. If not, I wouldn't recommend YouTube to people as like a career to get into for money or anything. But it had to become sustainable. And 2019, it was like this inflection point of like, well, I was looking at contracts, and then and it kind of grew rapidly during that year, and I was like, all right, so this seems to have legs to it, and I want to keep doing it, and it has continued on since then. So yeah, it was a bit of a transition point to get into it in the first place, but now it's sort of rolling along, and it's one of those things where it feels like I'm going to continue to do it as long as I can. I've got a lot of projects going on, it's I almost have too much stuff to do. I want to write a book, but I'm trying to keep the whole YouTube thing going, and I get a lot of opportunities and things, and it's just a matter of prioritizing what I'm actually going to do, rather than finding something to do.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some good feedback. I was reading some of the comments in your videos, and man, the people just love your style and love the videos you do. They're very like, it's a really good mix of like open-minded skepticism of the mainstream narrative and exploring alternatives and very well done videographically, if that's a word. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, obviously you're catching like you said, a real niche here with people that want to see this stuff in a new light. I mean, one of your last videos, you had sort of new footage that like nobody's really seen this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've had the opportunity now to get to some places and film in areas where you're very hard pressed to find a good, decent look at some of these things, and it's fascinating. I think some of the stuff we see, particularly like I think you might be talking about beneath the step pyramid, which they have only just reopened, and it's where they'd found like 40,000 of these just exquisite sort of machine lathe turned stone vases made from some of the hardest types of stone on the planet, and yeah, to get in and be able to share that with everyone's just it's really rewarding. I enjoy doing that, and some of the stuff people haven't seen, getting down into the Osiris Shaft, other areas, and that's been the benefit. It's been nice also. Egypt's beginning to open up some of these places, but as I said, there really is a lack of really good footage for a lot of this stuff. And I definitely have a niche. Like my stuff's like not the typical YouTube thing where it's like, you know, people upload frequently, maybe a time or two a week, and they're, you know, it's like an 8-minute or 10-minute video. Mine's much more long format, once a month, kind of. It takes me that long to put them together, but 45 minutes to an hour deep dive into different subjects and topics. And I do a lot of research in the back end. I'm always quoting Petrie and other sort of older sources because I think there's a lot of I guess just interesting perspectives you can take from all the work that's been done on these places. There's usually a long story to all of these places and all of these mysteries and all of these topics, and I kind of try to get into that and give everyone their kind of due that has looked into it and present it all as one package. But that's it's definitely a niche. It's not, you know, there's other ways that, like, you know, kind of like you mentioned Ancient Aliens, like that's it's an interest. I always treat Ancient Aliens like a double-edged sword. You know, it's great in that it presents a lot of these historical mysteries to people, and that may never have known about these things in the past. And I think it probably generates a lot of interest in some of these topics like Baalbek or Pumapunku and Tiwanaku. But it also presents it in kind of this context, this context of, well, we've kind of got this conclusion we're shooting at here that we're trying to support with the way we're presenting this. But I mean, I try to take a pretty open-minded approach to this stuff, and it frustrates some of the people that watch this a lot is in that I don't provide answers. Like, a lot of it's like I'm trying to present a lot of the mystery here, and that's the issue with most of our story of mainstream history, particularly when it comes to the nuance around a lot of these very ancient sites in Egypt and South America, is that the answer that we really have at the moment should be, we don't know how this was done and we don't know who really did it, but we kind of have this, I don't know if it's a need from kind of the academic establishment to declare that they do know it and they do have the answers. But when you dig into it, there's just so many contradictions and things you can't actually explain that don't get explained or they get ignored, and it's a much more nuanced story. So I try to approach that stuff and look at it all and take an open-minded look at it.
Yeah, I meant when I mentioned Ancient Aliens, I mean, actually that's something that Darren and I had in common from the beginning, and we started the show based on like following some of those researchers around to other conferences and stuff. Not following, but meeting them at other conferences. But what I was getting at is, you mentioned, you know, they put them in sort of these books that don't really get a lot of mainstream attention, and then it's either that for these researchers or Ancient Aliens not really having a lot of like these well done YouTube channels back then. But I mean, that's also changing now too. You must have more competition, more people putting these channels together as well. But I think that what you're talking about here with the scientism is I think it's inherent in all science and all areas. I mean, I've been reading these books from Charles Fort and the history of spiritualism and supernaturalism and all this, and they're all battling against this materialism and scientism back in the 1800s, 1700s. I mean, whenever that started, it was an issue back then. It was the same with astronomy, with physics. I mean, it really seems to be just inherent in humanity for some reason.
I agree. You're absolutely right. And this is, it's certainly not something that's unique to this field, to kind of the past and ancient history and archaeology and whatnot. Yeah, it's a nature of establishment, I think. And I spend a lot of time kind of explaining this and talking about it in my videos. I think a lot of it has to do with, I think, just the nature of establishment. There's and maybe it is human nature.
Yeah, I think it's more establishment. More institutional
to be authoritative
than human nature. Yeah.
For archaeologists and academics, I mean, that's the guys that are writing the textbooks that are saying, well, no, the dynastic Egyptians built this stuff. You know, Khufu definitely is responsible for that pyramid, and you know, there's no mystery to be found in the Serapeum and these 100-ton granite boxes. There's no hieroglyphs on them. Who cares? I mean, I guess their entire sort of identity is derived from their position as an accepted position as an expert, you know, like
as a skeptical expert.
That's their tenure. Their authority. Well, they're the ones who have the authority. It's like the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing to me is that we should, for these, I really focus on a lot of the engineering aspects of these ancient mysteries, like these 100-ton single piece precision carved granite boxes, like made from one piece of stone, one piece of granite. It's a huge box, about 100 tons. It's insane. But you'd think that the answers and the way we should be looking at these things is with engineers and engineers, construction experts, people that know what it takes to create artifacts and objects like this. But those aren't the people that are recognized as the experts on this stuff. It's the archaeologists and it's the Egyptologists. And these people are, I mean, that science it's closer to, arts and language studies. I mean, at its core, they're telling you about how ancient cultures lived, what their daily lives were like, what they did. They're interpreting their written works. It's like this interpretation of culture. It's not engineering. And, it's the funniest thing to me. It's like if there's an ancient chair, then it's the archaeologist that's the expert on that ancient chair. But you wouldn't ask him to engineer the chair that he's sitting on when he writes that opinion. And this crazy thing is that almost invariably, almost uniformly, when you show engineers and construction experts and these people that understand what it takes and stonemasons to work in these materials and to come up with these results, they're like, get out of town. Like, there's no way you're doing this with pounding stones and copper chisels and flint chisels and primitive methodologies. Like, it just doesn't. You can't do it. And they've tried a bunch of times. This is where the nuance comes in. There's been experiments, and Mark Lane has done stuff and tried to show that you can do it, and they've never successfully done any of that. They've always had to resort to modern tools and techniques and technologies to make even a small fraction of these things. So, guys like Chris Dunn have studied it, and Go ahead.
Well, what the last video and After School did a great job with your video as well. I just got to give a shout out to Mark over there as well. I mean, both that your video and his were fantastic. But what it really made me think of is
he's a great dude.
And we talked about those jars in the other show as well. But I mean, I didn't realize there's 40. They found 40,000 of these things, and the depth of the underground structure that you're in down there, and it really makes you think, like, this is such a large scale, like 40,000 precise made jars. I mean, that would be like if you had, 5 people working on those at a couple hours each, you're talking about like 7 years constantly just to make these jars. Like, it must be like, there was a word that you used, I think, or somebody used, that was like, if it has to be easy for them to do all this.
Right.
It has to be easy, right? It has to be worth the effort to make all this. And I feel like there's just a real huge missing piece of the puzzle here.
I agree, and that's what I'm trying to show and trying to look for, and to some extent as well. And in fact, we can get into it, but the next video I put out is going to be interesting because I've actually managed to do some LiDAR scanning of sites and places, and I think we can actually come up with some new information that may even help to drive the conversation forward, particularly around how they quarried stone and granite and things like that. But the jar story is really remarkable. Like, you got to remember, they found these things underneath the step pyramid of Djoser, which is a big step pyramid. It's at a site called Saqqara. It's attributed to the third dynasty. I think it was the last pharaoh of the third dynasty, Pharaoh Djoser, considered by many to be the sort of protogenitor pyramid, right? So it's this series of, it's like, doesn't have that pyramid shape. It's like stepped up, hence the name step pyramid. It's thought to be a series of stacked mastabas. This thing on its own, it's a big structure. It's remarkable, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's got any real aspects of high technology or anything like that. I think it was probably done by the third dynasty, dynastic Egyptians. What's interesting is what's beneath it. What you find underneath the ground there, and this is the case you find in a lot of this ancient Egyptian stuff, is the stuff that's under the ground is far more complex and far more well made and far more technologically advanced than what you find above the ground. And to me, it's like there's a possibility that these guys found a lot of this stuff and then built up their civilizations and their sites around what they'd found beneath the ground or what they'd known about, because I think a lot of this may have been done by their ancestor cultures, which they themselves talk about. But in the case of the step pyramid, you go into beneath this thing, and there's this huge, like 100-foot deep shaft that's about 40 or 50 feet square, and it's this massive big hole that's beneath the step pyramid, and at the bottom of it's a huge granite box that's been made up of like 32 individual pieces of granite, each weighing between sort of 3 to 6, 7 tons, and surrounding it is something like 6 or 7 miles of tunnels and catacombs, and it's in these tunnels and catacombs and chambers that they'd found 40,000, at least 40,000, more like 45 to 50,000 of these, the remnants, and in some cases whole pieces, but lots of shattered pieces of these incredible stone vases and jars and things like this. And they're made from, a variety of materials, schist and gneiss and diorite and granite and oh God, the list is almost endless, cyanite, of different types of stone. Some of them even ones that they've got examples made from corundum. What's interesting is this is a third dynasty. They've also found these objects in the first and second dynasty tombs, and the way they kind of explain them, and these are all, if you go look at the video, then I can show there's pictures of it and video of these things. They're lathe turned, they're precision carved. Like they're in some cases, you've got these vases that have been turned out to a thickness that's, as Flinders Petrie said, no thicker than stout playing card. So you're turning very brittle, very hard stone down to like the thickness of a playing card. You've got other examples that are just so perfectly balanced and well made that they stand up on their tip, almost like they're standing on the tip of an eggshell. Like they're balanced. That's how well balanced they are. Absolutely, no doubt, made on a lathe or on other sort of, I guess, high technology tools. We even have the tool marks on them. You've got centering marks. You've got lathe marks. You've got all sorts of indications of tool use and advanced tools and technologies that you cannot explain with what we know the third dynasty in the Old Kingdom Egyptians were using, which was pounding stones, copper chisels, flint chisels, no turning anything, just sort of pounding away on stuff. The funny thing is that they found these things in first and second dynasty tombs as well, which is the very first beginnings of the Egyptian civilization, according to the Orthodox timelines. And they themselves will say that in the museum at Saqqara, they tell you that these 40 or 50,000 jars were most likely heirlooms that they had inherited, and they'd come down to them from the earlier dynasties, the first or second dynasties. And it's just like, well, how do we know it was the first or second dynasties? Is it not also possible that these are far older? They may have been created and inherited long before the first or second dynasties, because it's a weird thing. There's not a lot of architectural stonework that the first or second dynasties really have to show for it. Like they somehow had this incredible ability to work these stone vases, which shows us just a technological grasp of stonework, but it's not reflected in anything else from that period. And then after the third dynasty, it just goes away. They never make any more of these again. Like that whole capability seems to vanish, and it's just one of many of these contradictions that's in the details of the mainstream story of history that you sort of look at. And when you dig into it, you kind of scratch your head and go, what is going on here? Like, none of this makes sense. The Orthodox explanation for this just doesn't make sense. And after a few years of looking into it, it's to me, the hypothesis that makes a lot more sense is the idea that these things, they inherited them as much as they inherited the giant statues, the giant precision-made boxes, the saw-cut slabs, and there's a lot of stuff, I think, that the ancient Egyptians inherited and then built their civilization around. They even talk about it themselves. Like, they have their own legends. They call themselves a legacy civilization. They talk about the time of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, who are these semi-divine, mystical beings that had magical capabilities. And before that was the time of Zep Tepi, when the gods themselves walked the earth. And they even have the list in the Turin Papyrus that goes back I think it's like 26,000 years, and they give you a list of kings and of rulers of that civilization, and they call themselves a legacy of that civilization. But we in our time today, and the mainstream, I guess, academia just kind of dismiss all that. They say, well, that's just myth and legend, and it didn't really start. And it started with the first dynasty, the first king of the first dynasty, and that's when the civilization actually started. So, yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you've answered a bunch of my questions right there. I mean, that's fantastic. I have a bit more I wanted to expand on, kind of like the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the resurrection that seemed to got passed to Christianity, but that's not sort of going further back, like you're talking about. I think pre or antediluvian, I guess. But I mean, what I wanted to bring up before on the underneath the step pyramid, you talked about, the 100-foot depth and all the caverns and catacombs. And I think you said that they might even go all the way to Cairo. Like we're talking many, many kilometers of tunnels. And is there like, what I started to think is, Was that all above ground at one point and it all got buried? Do you think? Has anybody ever talked about that, or is that just all sort of layer upon layer underneath the ground?
Well, it's. I don't think it was above ground. It's all tunneled through bedrock itself. Like it is literally. Yeah. It's not like it's not constructed like layer upon layer in the ground. It's a lot of that stuff is constructed is like tunneled through the bedrock. Yeah. So it's raw bedrock that you can see down there. So, and you're right. Like there was rumors for a long time, and this is like Hakim El Awan, who's Yusuf Awan's father. He's a famous indigenous wisdom keeper and guide who's and sadly passed away a few years ago. But Hakim, he's in the Pyramid Code, Carmen Bolter's documentary series that's on Netflix. He's a very famous guy, but he was kind of kept alive a lot of the indigenous wisdom, like the people's knowledge and understanding that had been passed down through time. And he would talk about a period of time where you could walk from Giza, which is Cairo, to Saqqara without the sun touching your back, like through tunnels underneath the ground. And I think it's entirely plausible. Sorry?
How far is that?
32 kilometers, probably, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not it's not hundreds, but it's still, 30 kilometers is still underneath the ground is still, because then you beg to ask the question, well, then where else can you go underground? I mean, that's obviously not the only tunneling.
Well, there's extensive. There's the thing people don't realize. There's extensive subterranean features on particularly these Old Kingdom sites. Like there's something like 10 or 11 miles of stuff at Saqqara alone. Of tunnels and chambers, and then at Giza, I've got some videos showing you that there's tunnels running off from places like the Osiris Shaft, which is 150 feet down below the ground, and we just don't know where they have never explored them. They're like they need to remove some rubble and things from them, but we don't know where they go. This is like that whole world of like, well, the Hall of Records. Is there anything under the Sphinx? It's such a bizarre thing to me that we haven't really made a good effort to try and find out, because we have a lot of the tools and technology. This is one of my other big bugbears with the establishment, the people that control access to these sites, is like we have a lot of this technology now. We can go in and non-destructively probably answer a lot of these questions.
Right.
But there seems to be a reluctance to do that in a lot of cases. And, probably one of the best examples of this is the great labyrinth at Hawara, which is I have a whole video exploring that topic. But there was a whole, for people that don't know, that the labyrinth is considered to be like one of the wonders of the ancient world that was then lost to the sands of time, like something that was described by Herodotus and Pliny the Elder and Diodorus Siculus, like these historical figures that talked about it and wrote about it as surpassing the pyramids in magnificence. You're talking about like 3,000 plus rooms in an underground labyrinth that was multi stories deep, like many multiple football fields made up of the most incredible granite works you've ever seen. Like they visited it, they talked about it, and it was just lost. But they found that in like 2008, I think it was. There was a study done. It's at Hawara, which is where Petrie originally thought it was. But they did some work there at Hawara in 2008, something called the Madahara Expedition. And if you dig hard enough on the internet, you can find the paper for it. Or I have a whole video talking about it. But they did this, and they actually did a bunch of studies with a whole number of techniques, including ground penetrating radar, also some other seismic methodologies. But they found it. They literally found, you can see sections of it in these maps and in these density scans. It's currently below the water table level there, and it's slowly being eroded away by this salty groundwater that's there. And the whole expedition, the report and everything, just got squashed. It got suppressed. And all of the members of this expedition were threatened with national security sanctions by Zahi Hawass, and they shut it down, and it never really got out into the public domain about what they'd found there. But they found the lost labyrinth of Egypt, and it's like literally one of the wonders of the modern world, and it's currently rotting away in groundwater at Hawara. And I don't know why. I mean, I think there's some political reasons that may be involved with that site in particular that have to do with kind of water rights and the management of water in Egypt and the Aswan
and the damming of the Nile and all that. Is that what the dam from the Nile flooded it, or?
That's the reason why the water table is rising in general, is because they dammed the Nile. it's a little bit counterintuitive because it removes the inundation, right? So in the south where they dammed the Nile at Aswan, it stopped that yearly inundation or flooding of the Nile. But what it also, and you'd think that would raise the water table, but what happens is that it removed the dry season. So there's no longer a dry season, which was what would really draw down on the water table. So now there's no dry season, and the water table level beneath the ground has been slowly rising, and it's been, it's come up several meters in the last 150 years or so, and it's basically flooding some of these sites. And some of the things that are beneath the ground, all in Lower Egypt, places like Hawara and Giza. They were worried about the water affecting the Sphinx. If you remember back a few years, they were worried about there's groundwater is going to affect the Sphinx. I can tell you in places like the Osiris Shaft, the bottom chamber of that's all flooded because that's with groundwater. At Hawara, that's also the case. Like the groundwater is at about 5 meters, and the labyrinth starts at about 9 meters, and you used to be able to get into the pyramid there, and Petrie, in fact, Flinders Petrie, about 150 years ago, explored the chambers of this pyramid, found some incredible stuff down there. But he got in there because the water table allowed him to do it, but you can't get in there anymore because the water table's risen. So yeah, I think that's got something maybe to do with it. It would be a big job to try to fix the issue in the area of the labyrinth to preserve it and excavate it. But I wish they would. I think that's something that if the world knew about it and all of the institutions, I think you could probably raise the money to make it happen. But it's one of the saddest things, I think, that we somehow let politics and all the rest of it get in the way of a discovery like that. But it's just symptomatic of what seems to me to be a resistance to release new information and really take a look at some of these mysteries and try to solve them, because I think we could. We have a lot of capability. We just don't seem to want to apply it. It's really weird.
Yeah. Again, it just seems like we're stuck in this paradigm where they really just don't want us, for some reason, thinking that there's advanced ancient civilizations or there was different races or species of humanoids walking around, or there's all these different sort of, I think, paradigm breaking truths that we could, I don't know, that would just shift the way we think about everything, history, our modern. Then we would start questioning all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
that's my conspiratorial thinking on it. Is it just feels like it opened up a can of worms that they wouldn't be able to put back. What else is not true of our history?
Yep.
Darren, do you have any questions?
Well, I remember John Ward telling me that that's what the labyrinth was all underwater. That was the main problem. He's like, it's there, we know where it is, but we just have no way of getting to it because of sand and water.
That's right. Yep.
That'd be a lot to pump out, I guess. You'd have to fix the drainage on the site. I get into it in that video, and I've been out to Hawara a few times now, and you can tell where people have been digging. People have been looking out there for a long time. Petrie thought he found it. He dug down, and he thought what he found, he found what he thought was the foundation for it. But in fact, he was standing on the roof of these big beams. He dug down and found these things. He's like, oh, well, this is all that's left. It's just like the foundation. I'm like, no, you're standing on the roof, and you'd have to fix the drainage on this huge site. And the problem is you've got this thing, it's called the Barwadi Canal, runs right through the middle of that site. And in fact, it runs right through the middle of the labyrinth, and you've got the labyrinth on both sides of it. And this provides irrigation water to what's called the Fayum region in Egypt. And this is this big depression, but it's like a very productive farmland. Like they grow a lot of the food that Egypt needs in this area. And this is one of the main kind of irrigation canals that run in and out of it. So you kind of would have to, you're starting to mess with farmers' waters rights and the food production, and you would have to fix the drainage for this massive site. You'd have to carve a huge ditch or drain around the whole thing, I think, to start with. Start trying to stop the groundwater from getting in there, and then start draining it, then start excavating. You're probably talking millions and millions of dollars worth.
But like you mentioned before about non-destructive, though? Has it been non-destructively surveilled, or is there, is it mapped at all out with LiDAR or ground penetrating radar or anything?
not all of it, but the Madahara Expedition did ground penetrating radar. That was the whole expedition, and
But
they
for
did
some
that
of
in
it.
3 different areas and found the labyrinth in all of them. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you'd be there for years trying to map all because it's so big, but they have in 3 different sections. They found it in every section that's around this pyramid. Like this thing's like a mile.
But I mean, we should be
size.
there
Like, it's
for years.
humongous. Like it's
we're at all these other places
We
for
should be.
years. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we
No, yeah, they-
as in
I don't know,
humanity, of course, you know.
Well, this one guy, Louis de Cordier, he kind of personally financed this, and he partnered up with the Ghent University in Belgium to do this thing, to go and try and find it. So it was always a limited scope investigation, and so you have to. The trick is in doing this stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, you should." I get this a lot from people who watch the videos. They're like, "Oh, why don't you go there and dig here, or look at this, or bring these tools?" You're not allowed to. You can't. If you go to Giza, you are not allowed to bring any measurement devices. You are not allowed to bring any metal tools. You can't do anything. You as a tourist, you really can't do anything. That's part of the rules. And the only way that this is how access gets controlled to these sites. It's most of these sites are like partnered with the different universities, and like the British are the ones that work at Giza, and you've got the Germans work at another site, and the French work at another site. At like Saqqara, it's the French, and it's their universities and institutions that then partner with the Department of Antiquities in Egypt, and they get the permission to do different things. They got to run it through them. But part of those deals is always the fact that the Antiquities Department kind of controls the release of information, so that they're the ones who decide whether or not what you find gets made public or not, and when and how. So, it's very difficult to and time consuming and costly to get to do any of this sort of work. So it was kind of a miracle in the first place that Louis de Cordier managed to get this Madahara expedition funded and approved, and they went and did the work. But then once he found it, they literally squashed it. He had one public lecture at Ghent University, and literally in his report, he waited a few years, like 10 years or something, after, and he went to hell with it, and he put it out on the internet. It's since been disappeared. You can find it if you go look at the Internet Archive. The whole website's gone now. But you can find the paper if you look hard enough, and in it he talks about the fact that he wanted to release it, but then, and he names, I give Zahi a lot of crap in some of my work, but Zahi Hawass literally, he says he threatened the members of that team with national security sanctions, as in, you can never come back to Egypt, we'll arrest you if you talk about this, which is just crazy. And anyway, so that's that's the challenge with a lot of this stuff. It's why it's like, do we have drones? Do we have robotics? Do we have tools and techniques that we could go explore all these things? Yes, but do we do it? No, for some reason. I don't know why, but it's like I could probably name a dozen different things that would be non-destructively we could go and explore and probably move the conversation forward easily without hurting a damn thing, just using the technology that we've got.
Do you think anyone's done that, or anyone's doing that behind the scenes?
I think, yes, there's been some. I think for sure in certain places there has been, and there's strong evidence for clandestine digs and explorations that have happened that aren't in the public domain. In particular, you can look at the area around the Sphinx. And in fact, if anybody wants to learn more about that, you can go and check out Robert Boval's website. I think it's robertboval.co.uk, and he lays out quite a timeline of sort of explorations in that area that's been going on since the 70s. That's been enabled by Mark Lehner and well, in particular Zahi Hawass, but in combination with the Edgar Cayce Foundation, which is a whole other can of worms. Because of course Edgar Cayce's the guy that prophesized the Hall of Records would be found under the left paw of the Sphinx. And his organization, I forget the name, ARE, I can't remember the acronym for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
they've been basically partnering, and they funded Zahi and Lehner's educations, and and college degrees, and they still go and lecture at their organization every so often. But you can find newspaper articles, and Boval's collected all this stuff, and he shows it. Like, there's been a lot of sort of private explorations and drilling. People think, we've never really explored or looked under the Sphinx. We have been. They've drilled under there a number of times. Since the 70s, they've been drilling and trying to look for stuff under there. I think, the boardwalk in front of the Sphinx has appeared at all of a sudden, and we don't know what's underneath that. And it's I think, yeah, there's a possibility that some of that's been explored and the public doesn't know. In general, it's not really public knowledge about what excavations are happening where or when it happens and when it comes out. That's information that's typically pretty tightly controlled by the authorities. I will say that the new guy that's in charge of the Department of Antiquities seems to be moving in a really good direction. He's opening up more sites. I mean, they're doing stuff like they're doing another and more detailed muon scan detection on the Great Pyramid. Some that's been in the news recently. They're going to take a much more high resolution look at these potential voids that they found inside the Great Pyramid. But yeah, we don't know. I mean, but we could for damn sure send more robots up the shafts. We can solve those problems. I mean, that took decades and decades, and it was mostly because they were just trying to control it. Like the authorities in Egypt were trying to control that stuff. There's any number of other shafts I can think of in like places like the Serapeum that are worthy of sending some sort of robotic probe down, but we don't seem to want to do any of that.
Has the left paw on the Sphinx been, sort of confirmed or debunked or anything? Do you think? Like, what's your opinion on that?
So when Robert Bauval and John Anthony West they used ground penetrating radar around the whole Sphinx, and they confirmed the presence of cavities.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Now, they did, and so but Zahi Khawass and the establishment came out and said, "Well, no, that's just all you found is natural cracks in the limestone, in the bedrock." And then there was a well-publicized exercise where they were drilling down, and Zahi talks about it all the time. They were drilling down beneath the Sphinx, but if you look at it, they drill down next to the body of the Sphinx. They're not drilling down at the pores.
Oh.
And they didn't drill very far, so there's also evidence of tunnels that seem to lead off towards the Sphinx, like from the Osiris Shaft. So where the Sphinx is, it's at the end of the causeway, so it's kind of connected to the middle pyramid complex. There's they call it the Khafra pyramid. It's the one with the casing stone still intact on the top. It's the one in the middle. And it's interesting. It's the most megalithic pyramid. I think there's a good chance that's the oldest one. It has the most impressive sort of megalithic stonework on the outside of it, and it connects to this massive causeway that runs down to the Valley Temple, which is very famous, and then there's the Sphinx is on the left hand side of it. So it's kind of connected to that, and halfway down this causeway is something called the Giza Shaft. The Osiris Shaft, and we're going to go there. This is a real adventure too. We're going to go there in November. We're going to go back down into the Osiris Shaft, and it's 3 levels. You climb down these ladders, and you get down to about 150 feet below the ground into a chamber that's full of water. But there are passages that lead off towards the Sphinx and one towards the pyramid. Like there are passages that we've never explored. We don't know where they go, and we don't know what they connect to. So I suspect that there's a good chance there's something beneath the ground in Giza. There's lots of examples, and also along the causeway further down towards the Sphinx, because it's this huge constructed causeway, right? It's massive and wide, made of these huge limestone blocks, and in a couple of places, these massive limestone blocks, there's cracks between them, and I showed this in one of these videos. You can tip sand into these little cracks, into these little holes, and it disappears. It's like, that's crazy. That's like, how big does that cavity beneath that thing have to be? It would be filled up. Yeah, you're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of years of windblown sand blowing into these cracks, and everyone and their brother like tipping sand into it. And Yusuf, who's our guide there, who's about my age, mid-40s, he says that his dad, Hakim El-Awant, showed him these cracks when he was a little kid, and they were tipping sand into them then, and he's still doing that today. Like, sort of push a bit of sand in, like, where's it going? Like, what's down there? Like, there's clearly cavities and other tunnels and other spaces below the ground, and for sure I think that's a possibility for the Sphinx. Manu Sefer Zada released a good book recently about the Sphinx that may suggest that maybe the Old Kingdom Egyptians, they're the ones who found the Hall of Records, and they took some of that information and it's been replicated and reproduced in certain priesthoods and traditions that they investigate throughout the years. So that it may be the case that Hall of Records or that information might have actually been found in ancient times, and some of that information, things like it seems like there's some advanced sort of celestial knowledge, stuff like that, like that you couldn't possibly attribute to the dynastic Egyptians, that seems to show up in a few places that are associated with a particular priesthood. And
like some of the mystery schools, like the Egyptian priests.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So on these wooden sarcophagus and on these like little things that are dedicated to these dead guys or whatever, there's some indications that, like, okay, they're showing you the scope of the solar system and the orbits of the planets and all this sort of stuff. Like, it's an interesting book.
Who did you say that was from?
It was Manu Seyfezada, Manu. Oh God, I can't spell his last name, but Manu Seyfezada. It's I think it's called Beneath the Sphinx. Oh,
yeah, I'll find it. That's fine. That's enough. Yeah.
Well, you kind of
he released it.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Darren. Sorry.
Well, you kind of teased it, but I guess we could mention that we are going to Egypt to crawl down into that shaft and do a bunch of other crazy shit.
We are, yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a good time. Yeah, in fact, on this trip, we're also going down into the Sphinx enclosure. So that's so these trips, I've been doing them every year for the last couple of years. And we'd been talking about doing one together for a while. So it's you guys, it's me, it's Kyle and Russ, Brothers of the Serpent. We're going to Egypt. It's in November. And I kind of like to build these trips around special permissions. So one of the nice things about going with a group is that we can do some things that are definitely not on the regular tourist track that cost thousands of dollars, but having a group allows you to sort of spread that cost out so everybody gets to experience it. And we're doing a number of those. So one of those is the Osiris Shaft, which is a special permission. It's not open to the public. Another one is going down into the Sphinx enclosure itself. So this is, again, you can't get down there these days. You can sort of look at the Sphinx from up on the causeway, but you can't actually get down into the enclosure with the Sphinx and look at the erosion on the walls of the Sphinx that's caused all this controversy with Robert Schoch. And, I had Randall talking about it recently on a podcast. And we're getting down in there. We're also doing a number of other things like getting into the Assyrian. We've got a full 2-hour private visit into the Great Pyramid with all of the chambers open, which again you normally won't have if you're just going there as a tourist. You can get into the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber, but you can't get to like the Queen's Chamber or the Subterranean Chamber. But we'll have all that stuff open. So yeah, it's and the last couple of years of doing these trips has been fantastic. Like, just it's a great time. Kind of a bucket list item, really.
Yeah,
totally. Someone was saying that Egypt was a bucket list, and I was like, well, one of these tours is the premium bucket for your bucket list, because it's not just rip through some places. You'll be immersed in it and with some people that really know what they're talking about. So do you prefer, is that your favorite one? Because you've been romping around. I mean, the bros were hinting at me when I talked to them a couple weeks ago about maybe going to South America here soon. Is that your second favorite? I mean, Egypt's clearly your favorite, or is Egypt your favorite?
Tough to say. I mean, you can't beat Egypt for the monuments. It's the sheer number and size and scope of the ancient monuments and mysteries in Egypt is I think one of the premium places to go. But that said, I was in South America last year as well. I went to Egypt and South America again last year. I've been to both places a number of times. I love visiting South America, and it's just as fascinating. It's a different style. Like there's, and it's like South America. It's also, you get to experience places like Cusco and the culture, like the modern day culture, and you're up in the mountains, and it's like a different palette almost. Like I almost get, even with the videos, I kind of get sick of the desert, like the desert colors. And so looking in South America is that more green and verdant color. It's like there's a whole different palette to it almost. And then, hanging out in Cusco and places like that is amazing in South America as well. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably, if forced to choose, I'd say Egypt's probably my favorite. It's just like, because there is just an endless list of things to explore, and I always find more and more that I want to go see when I'm down there and dig into it deeper. But it's close. Like I also am just utterly fascinated by like what's in Peru and Bolivia, and for that matter, all around the world. There's a lot of places I haven't got to yet that I want to get to. India, everyone's always on me about, when are you going to get to India again? I'm like, well, let's wait and see how the whole pandemic thing shakes out around the world, because Malta and Turkey and Lebanon, and there's tons of places, Easter Island that I want to get to, but it's just I'm waiting for stuff to kind of open up.
Is there a crossover in your opinion in the tech used between those sites in South America and the sites in Egypt, or do you think we're looking at two different civilizations? Clearly.
Well, I think you're looking at like two different flavors of the same ice cream kind of thing. I think it's there's definitely some crossover, and it's not just those sites either. You also have commonalities in Easter Island, Lebanon at Baalbek, and stuff in Turkey as well. I think but particularly between South America and Egypt, you can draw strong parallels between, say, the work in the Kerkwyk, which is this megalithic church that's in the center of Cusco. Very, very similar to, say, the Valley Temple in the way that the stone is laid out. There's a difference in the scope and the size, but it's very similar. And then you have other places like the Menkaure pyramid at Giza. It's the third pyramid, the smaller pyramid, but it was cased in granite. The granite, the puffiness and the shape of those stones and the way they've kind of been arranged, very similar to some of the stuff that you see in the streets of Cusco, like Sacsayhuaman. So they're not identical. There's definitely some different. Like Peru has this real unique kind of like flowing shapes to their stones and the way that they've been put together that you don't typically see in Egypt. Egypt's kind of more linear. There's a lot of like straight lines and straight sharp corners and specific angles in Egypt, versus a lot of stuff in Peru is these very complex curved and compound curved surfaces, and the way these stones are joined together, it's the same. But to some extent, you still have it's the same mortarless kind of megalithic stonework. You have the same insistence on kind of the same material. Like this is a very common thing when you look at a lot of this megalithic site. It seems like the builders, whoever built them, went to great lengths to make sure they were using the same type of stone, no matter how far or how difficult it was to transport that. They were using a particular type of stone in a particular area. That's very much the same. But there's exceptions in both places. There's a lot of like the Kerkwyk in Cusco is all straight lines and sharp angles, and then you've got places like Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia, not very far from Peru, part of that sacred valley, that is definitely all straight lines and very precise stonework. I mean, almost. Bolivia and Pumapunku and Tiwanaku is kind of a thing all of its own. It's almost unique in its the complexity of the stonework that you find down there. That place is really fascinating. I actually think that place, more than any other, may hold the keys to unlocking kind of a whole hidden chapters of civilization on this planet. And I don't think enough attention is paid to investigating what actually happened in that site.
That's with the H blocks?
I've spent a lot of time investigating that site. It's the H blocks. Yep. That's where the H blocks are. Yeah.
They definitely look precast, eh?
Right. They look cast. I mean, that's what they look. But they're all subtly different, and they sort of interlock as well. And there are places where you can find tool marks there as well. Like you can find saw blade marks and things on them. And it's just, there's even some evidence, there's been some work looking into the andesite material that it's possible that they have been cast. There seems to be some trace of organic material in the andesite, which wouldn't be the case if it was natural andesite being, plutonic rock. Any organic material would have burned up when it was lava. But so it's odd to find organic material. I just think a lot more study needs to be done there, and probably the work of guys like Arthur Poznansky, who gets derided in general, but he basically discovered and excavated that site for some 40 years and published on it. A lot of his work gets dismissed, but I think there's a tremendous amount to be learnt from what he found there.
Why does this get dismissed?
In fact, they're really hard to find. Well, because he dates it to like 15,000 years old.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons.
That's kind of what I was going to ask you about. Is like, we've had people on the show before that have done a lot of traveling as well, and they've looked at all this, and they kind of came away with a bit of a different, sort of less, sort of conspiratorial or speculative view of our history. Like they think that there was advanced civilization but it wasn't advanced way like before the floods or before like antediluvian. But I think that, you know, this goes way back myself. But I don't have, you know, I haven't traveled around enough to really build a super tight opinion on it. But what do you think? Like, what would be your speculation of the overall kind of like your overall hypothesis about like how far back this goes? Was it pre-ice age? Like, is it, you know, advanced cultures traveling all over the earth back then, different sort of different species or races?
Mm-hmm. So, and this is putting I'd firmly put on the whole speculation hat on as well, because I don't have these answers. But from looking at, I do think that there's a strong chance that when we say antediluvian, we're talking pre-Younger Dryas in particular. So, which, you know,
so
was the
this is the
15,800, 900 years ago. Yeah, so 15,000. But I think it's very possible that we've had civilizations on this planet that stretched that may have existed long before that as well. Like I kind of look at the human timeline as an example. Like, we used to think we're about 40 or 50,000 years old. Then it went to 90,000. Then it went to 150,000. Then they found some human remains in Morocco that put us back to about 300,000. Some of the genetic indicators, you know, when we look at our DNA and that of Neanderthals, sort of show that we and the Neanderthals may have split from a common ancestor between 800 or 900,000 years ago. We also are noticing that, you know, there's all these other subspecies, these hominids, our cousins, you know. We have these the Denisovans, the Homo floresiensis, the all these different types of
giants,
hominids.
I mean, you can even make an argument for giants.
And giants, but they also seem to have culture and technology. There's a jade bracelet that was made by the Denisovans that has a drill hole in it that shows some advanced tool use. So when you think about civilization, I think it's entirely possible that it may not have been purely Homo sapiens sapien involved. Like, it could have been other flavors of humanity that may have had something to do with it, and that may have been a global culture at some point. There certainly seems to be a lot of indicators from that, not just in like megalithic stonework, right? I think there's tremendous evidence written into cultures itself. You talked briefly at the start about, well, you know, the whole resurrection thing coming down from the Egyptians into our religions, but there's a lot more to it than that as well. We have, you guys did the reading of Hamlet's Mill, right? You looked into that book. Like, there's significant astronomical data that's encoded into different cultures and religions all around the world that seem to be coming from some common source cultures, come from somewhere. We now have genetic evidence that suggests that our populations were much more intermingled than we'd previously thought. So, for example, we have genetic commonalities between the inhabitants of Australasia and the Aboriginals, and along with the people of South America, a commonality that doesn't exist in the peoples of Central or North America, which basically means that you have this connection that flowed across the Pacific at some point in the past, and that it didn't come through the Northern Land Bridge. You know, they didn't come through that Northern Land Bridge into North America, then into Central America, then into South America. Like, there's all this sort of weird information and points that seem to indicate, all right, something else was going on way back in the day. And you can look at the information in maps. Like, there's all sorts of detailed I guess mapping of the planet and longitude and mathematical technology that is present in ancient documents, things like maps, the Piri-Reis map and Oronto Phineas map. So there's all these indicators of it, and I think, to me, it's like the commonality and what's happened to us is that we went through a cataclysm. Like, we've just lost our cultural memory thanks to cataclysm. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it's like we don't want to admit that it's possible that our current civilization isn't just, it's not like this is the human civilization, like we're on this preordained path from, the Stone Age to, as John Anthony West would say, striped toothpaste. But it's rather the case that we're just the latest oscillation of civilization. We're just the latest up and down, And I think, I think if we all realize that, and if we could maybe teach that in schools a bit earlier on, and people realize that, okay, humanity and civilization itself has risen and fallen in the past, and we've had things like cataclysms that are caused by cosmic impacts and whatnot, and it can all be wiped out again unless we get our act together and unless we actually do something about it. I think that message and that type of an idea, a concept, getting into the whole zeitgeist of civilization, we might stand a chance of changing our priorities, but so far not so much. I mean, we're still busily fighting wars with each other and worrying about the next election cycle and all the rest of it. There seems to be almost less focus about the future than ever before now. But
I'd say it's
I think that
worse. It's worse in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Sadly, I agree.
I
think
it's better and worse because there's more people like you out there too that are interesting more people. So there's like, it's kind of like a little of both. There's more people in the Matrix, but there's also more people pulling out. I don't know.
Yeah.
More people should pull out. We'd be in a
You're right.
better place. Like 95% of these fuckers should have been pulled out.
I agree.
Or swallowed.
Well, I think that's the It's like the power of the internet. It's that weird double. It's like sometimes and coming from a background of technology, I sometimes think it's technologies where it's in a race with itself. Like some part of it's attempting to free us, and then the other part's attempting to enslave us. It's like I'm not sure which one's going to happen fully yet. It's like technology and the media and the internet and the way that we communicate now is so and our techniques for doing this stuff is so effective. It's incredibly effective. It's about sucking people into that matrix. Like if you just listen to mainstream media and you think what you're told by the mainstream media, but at the same time, and they're fighting hard against this now, but at the same time, those same platforms and that same technology gives people the ability to break free of all of that. Like if they only go and look and listen to in the right places, you can snap out of it. So I don't know which one's going to happen first, but I think it ends up in that result of the no agenda thing, right? It's like the two universes. It's almost a case of that.
And I keep having this faint hope.
It all comes to you through the same pipe.
Yeah, and I keep having this faint hope that if this paradigm is built on lies and propaganda, that it can't sort of metaphysically survive. Like that there'll be some power that's good against that, that just won't let that happen. Like you can't let the planet be enslaved by lies. If it was, I don't know. I have this hope that maybe people will awaken and it'll reach this tipping point where their sort of house of cards will crumble. But man, it's I don't know which way it's going to go.
I would argue history. Well, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that history shows us that this is the anomaly. For 99.9% of our history, we've been fucking enslaved with a lot less freedom than we enjoy today. But I mean, and a lot more freedom in a lot of ways too. But the interesting thing that I like is being around for that the crossroads of freedom and technology, where you can, because like even 100 years ago, the chances of us going to Egypt and South America and the Azores in your lifetime are slim to none. Oh. You might get one of those if you're lucky, and it's going to take you 6 months to do it.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't want to live in any other period of time. Like I'm not. Yeah, I think it's an incredible time to be alive. We live like the kings of old, no matter what people say. I mean, just we have unimaginable access to a lifestyle that's just been unheard of for like 99% of all humans that have ever lived before us. Like, good time to be alive. Interesting set of challenges, but still a good time to be an actual human walking around on the planet.
At least in this oscillation.
Flushing toilets is not to be underestimated.
And bidets, bro. I'm telling you.
In this oscillation, yeah.
Hey,
I'm on board. I heard you say that.
I mean, I can't say enough good things about a bidet. I can't say enough good things about a bidet. There's no going back. I'm thinking about buying one for the office, for my day job, because I'm just like, I can't shit here anymore.
You know what? How I figured that? Egypt. They have what's called, and you'll figure this out when we go to Egypt, all the toilets there have, like, they're quote-unquote Muslim toilets. and they all have a little valve, and like it's built into the bowl. There's a little squirter, and you just turn a little tap on the side. And it's like the first trip to Egypt. I'm like, this is a revelation. And ever since then, it's just like 2015 or something. And ever since then, I'm like, they're on all the toilets in this house. And I saw your tweet. You're like, bidets. That's all. Like that was the tweet.
That's
like,
it. That's the
damn
tweet.
right. I've been preaching this. I've been preaching the same thing to people. I'm like, you know.
Here's what I tell people when they're like,
if you have a beard, you know.
when they're like, really, bro, really, it seems kind of fucked up. And I'm like, okay, just picture this. You've got to go pick some poop off the floor with your bare hands. Okay, a couple handfuls of poop, put it in the garbage. You walk over to the counter, you got two options. There's a sink there, or there's just a roll of toilet paper. What are you going for?
That's a good way to put it.
You're going for the sink every time.
That's
and here's the other thing.
way to put it.
Is it also just gets away from having that like dried up paper on your asshole all the time.
But where does it go though?
Flakes.
Like where does it go?
Yeah.
Like does it splash anywhere? Or like where does the mess go?
It's washes
down
off.
into the bidet. It just gets flushed down to the bidet.
Washes it down. It just washes off.
The
you
one
still,
I
you
have,
still wipe after.
You still wipe. You just dry up, and if there's a little poo on it, give it another squirt.
Yeah.
It's. I'm telling you, this is the next time you're over here, you take mine for a test drive, Graham.
All right, we'll do.
I can't. Anyway, I cannot wait to go to Egypt.
Chin beard, I tell people.
I cannot wait to go to Egypt. I mean, it seems so far away at one time, but I mean, the kids are getting excited now. They were just saying the other day, it's like, wow, we're down to like 9 months or 8 months away till we're out of here. Might even be down to almost 7 months until we're going. Yep. So I mean,
well, people are going to ask if there's tickets available still.
Well, technically there is.
There are. So there is. The registrations are full, but it's people register. The way to secure a seat is to pay the deposit. Like we've just something I've learned from previous trips is like we'll keep accepting registrations, and it's essentially first come first serve on who actually wants to pay the deposits to do it. Because in previous years we've had people like, oh, we'll register, and then you don't have to come down to a month before the trip leaves, and they're well, okay, we're not gonna pay the deposit or the money, and then it's like, oh, we're scrambling around because it's been sold out for 6 months, and now we're 3 weeks out, and we've got to like, hey, there's a bunch of seats available. So this time around, we're like, if you want to, you can register and you can get in touch with Ildi, ask all the questions, and do all and figure it all out. All of the details, the trip itinerary, the full details are on my websites, unchartedx.com/tour. All the pricing, all the details, and there's a registration link is there as well. And once you get in touch with Ildi, she'll help you with all of the questions and stuff. But yeah, it's basically we're going to, until people have everybody's paid deposits. That's the point where we'll actually start a wait list. But we still at this point still have a few tickets left. I think there might be 10 or 15 slots at least available at this point. I mean, there's plenty of registrations other than that, but that's from a deposit perspective. I think we've got a bunch of seats still available.
Nice.
It'll be a good trip.
It's going to be amazing. I mean, I can personally vouch for at least half of the people that have signed up because it's over half people that we've traveled with before. So they've either traveled with Ben. Yep. Or they've traveled with the bros and us, or they've done a contact at the cabin. So, and I mean, we've met over half of these people. If you're going to do a bucket list Egypt trip, you might as well do it with like 60 of the coolest people. I mean, friends for life. You'll have friends for life.
Yeah, it'll be great. And having Yusuf there as well, he's the only guy I'd recommend to show you around these things that I can just trust me. The Nile cruise is going to be epic. Like I love that part of it. It's probably my favorite part of the tour. Is we spend 4 nights on a cruise ship going down the Nile, and it's just it's really cool. It's a good time, and like I said, it's a bucket list thing. We definitely hit the highlight, hit a lot of the sites, and the special permissions make it kind of really special. You get to do some stuff that almost everybody else that goes to Egypt won't get to do.
You won't ever feel like you'll have to go back if that's possible. If like you won't be like, oh man, should I go to here or should I go to here? We're probably going to both. So you're good. Check out the tour. I mean, Ben, It's been fantastic this last year getting to know you and getting to travel with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at least 4 more times this year, maybe 5. Yeah. And we're just warming up. So where can people find all of your stuff?
UnchartedX.com is the main site. That's got a link to all of my videos, everything else. All of my socials are on there as well. Otherwise, all of my videos are on the UnchartedX YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube, search for UnchartedX. You'll find it, or it's youtube.com/c/UnchartedX. Those are the main ones. I'm reasonably active on the socials these days. I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. Also Mastodon these days. So all of those links are on the website.
Fantastic. It's I'm on the Twitter too. I get myself into trouble on there. That's the problem. But I mean, Ben, it's been we really love your stuff. We really love the channel. I mean, you talk about Yusuf. I would say that you and the bros are on that list for a lot of people, as well as people that they'd love to go to Egypt with and point out this and that. I know I've recommended your channel to a bunch of people. I mean, as heard on the Joe Rogan Experience, the biggest show in the history of the world. So I think it's just a matter of time until I picture Joe watching your videos. I feel like he's watching them. It's just a matter of time until he drags you on that show.
Maybe. You never know. Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, Ben, huge thanks for coming on the show. And if we don't see you here in April, we'll see you in June for sure.
June for sure. Yeah. I'll get in touch with you about the April thing. Sounds good to me, though. I'm on board, I think. So.
It's an amazing trip. So yeah, let's get you out to that for sure.
Cool.
Okay,
well,
Ben.
Graham, Darren.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
You too.
Keep cracking out fantastic videos.
Cheers. Thanks,
ciao.
Guys.
And that was our chat with Ben from the UnchartedX podcast. What do you think, buddy?
Oh yeah, it's great. I love it.
He's just one of those great people too, you know. It's one of those. It's like they say, don't meet your heroes, but when you get into the podcast world, they're all super cool.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like all the people that we were like eager to meet when we first started out, and that we've met along the way, have all been super cool.
Yeah, and his videos, like, I mean, I saw just recent one. I mean, he has, a couple 100,000 subscribers, maybe at least, but his videos are getting 4 times the amount of views than he has subscribers. So, he just comes across very authentic. His stuff is just sort of natural. It comes natural to him, I think. He's just talking from an open heart and an open mind, and it's just fantastic.
I think he's up to like 240,000 now.
I know, but his latest video had at least double that, I think.
Yeah,
views. And usually it's the other way around. Usually the views are like a 5th of your subscribers. So
or like ours, you're like a third or like a 30th of your subscribers. People just go subscribe and never go back. But we're not a YouTube show. We're supposed to be found on YouTube, and then you migrate over and listen to the podcast. Actually, the last show didn't go to YouTube. I haven't investigated why.
Oh boy!
So we might be on timeout.
No way! And you know which one it was? It was the one on the alternative healthcare. I mean, that's the one that we shouldn't have really done in that feed.
Oh, they just blocked it right out of the gate. You think?
Oh my God! Yeah, they probably did. That was the one that we really should have done and outlawed, but we wanted to give it a chance in studio and all that. And oh my God! Yeah,
sons of bitches. Anyway. Yeah. Big thanks to Ben for coming on the show. Head over to his stuff, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Head over to contact@thecabin.com if you want to jump onto one of these trips coming up in April. It sounds like he's coming. He's coming in June. He's coming in September. And of course, head over to his website. Check out the Egypt trip if you want to go to Egypt with him as well. I couldn't recommend it enough. I can't wait to go. I'm super excited. The kids are super excited. And it's going to be a great trip. I mean, even just the stars at night, it's just going to be fucking amazing. Out on that Nile. Wow. Be a great trip. If you want to check out the Randall Carlson stuff, like I said, all that stuff's over at contact@thecabin.com. If you want to get on a trip, adultbrain.ca. If you want to check out all the audiobooks we've been doing, or you could just type Graham Dunlop or, into Audible, they'll all pop up. I think we got 52 out now.
Speaking of Egypt, Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, Volume 1. It's 33 hours. The first 8 books from Gerald Massey is now out.
That's right. It's 33 hours long. History of the Supernatural, Volume 1 will be coming out right away. Combined works of Charles Fort. There's an insane amount of books there. Go to addlebrain.ca. You click on the link at the top. That'll say our books on Audible. They'll all pop up there. And you can check all that out. And grimerica.ca/support. If you guys are getting a little value from the show, it's more important than ever that you support it. It's getting, everything's getting more expensive these days. grimerica.ca/support. We understand it's tough, but we can't do the show without supporters like you. So if you are a supporter, we love you. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you very much. If you're not, maybe you can head over this week, grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for that monthly, even if it's $1 or $2 a month. That's it all helps. If all the listeners,
it helps me do this from home now as a day job. Like I have to, I no longer work.
Maybe I can not work
job.
one day.
Exactly.
It all helps. If everyone gave $1 a month, we'd never have to work. So we'd be laughing, but most people don't. If you want to check out our other podcasts, over to grimericaoutlawed.ca. There's a whole nother podcast over there. It's episode 74 or 75 or something like that. You can check all that out. grimericaoutlawed.ca. Different topics over there, usually the more conspiratorial type stuff. Check that out. I think that's about it. We love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Teach me all your secrets to get a good handle on a better way to live. How does one get out of bed every day in the throes of the apocalypse? Should I bury my head in the sand or sabotage their evil plan? I feel really trapped, an ant burned by a magnifying glass. It's all a little bit too convenient. All the evidence went up in flames. Phonies, fraudsters, scammers belong in the slammer. My friend, best give up their names. Should I call on militiamen or pass out a petition pen? I feel really trapped, an ant burned by a magnifying glass. I don't know what y'all been told, but I got a soul made out of gold. Sound off, 1, 2, sound off, 3, 4, cadence count, 1, 2, a 3, 4. Some time ago a crazy dream came to me. I dreamt I was walking into World War III. As prophetic as humidity, as aching bones, as frantic animals. Sophia wrote it down, built an ark, now she floats it down a river dark. As prophetic as deja vu, as wormwood, as falling stars above. Sophia wrote it down, built an ark, now she floats it down a river dark. I can't even hear my own thoughts for the life of me over the din of a bruised and broken culture. The media spins and splatters and spins and clatters, and I cringe because it's psychological warfare. Don't you feel yourself getting really mad? How did we let it get this bad? Don't you feel really trapped, like a brain in a vat? Hard to close Pandora's box, but sirens are singing me off a cliff. I'm looking to hitchhike to Shangri-La over yonder. Sophia, would you give me a lift? Hopped out of the Hegelian rebellion. Say goodbye to all you Machiavellians. Let evil destroy itself. I'm bound for Shangri-La. 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 I'll let you be in my dream if I could be in yours. I'll let you be in my dream if I could be in yours. As prophetic as morning doves, as groundhogs, as fallen stars above. Sophia wrote it down, built an ark, now we're floating it down a river dark. As prophetic as white wolves, flight above a river